Right, well, we can go ahead and just get right into it if you're ready for it.
Sounds good.
So just, I guess, welcome to the show, and can you kind of just introduce yourself to everyone?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm Haley Coder, and I'm the head dance team coach here, and this is my 4th year. I started right when Northwest opened up, and that's the short version.
So trying to get into like your background and everything like that. Like, how did you initially get into dance? I know that you eventually went and studied in college and did in high school.
Mm-hmm.
What was kind of your introduction to dance and how did you get started?
Yeah, my mom actually put me in a ballet class when I was 3 years old. And then that's actually pretty common. That's when most kids do start. Mm-hmm, yep, that's the first year that they allow it. 3-year-olds do one little ballet routine. Yep. I started competing, though, when I was 5. My mom had a background in gymnastics growing up, and so she was really into it, and she actually taught tumbling classes at the studio that I grew up. So I spent a lot of time there. I got really into it. Grew up competing all the way through my senior year of high school then. Like you said, I was on the high school dance team. I actually went to Waukee, so I was on the dance team there freshman through junior year. I didn't do it my senior year, partially due to a shoulder injury that I had and partially due to burnout. It is a lot, yeah. The hours add up. It takes a lot of time. But so I initially wasn't going to dance in college at all. I was pretty dead set on being done with it by that time, and my mom had convinced me about a week before tryouts at Iowa State. I was planning on going there. My whole family's been an Iowa State team family since all I can remember. So I'd always just been kind of dead set on going there without dance team in mind. And then my mom convinced me about a week before tryouts to just try out and see what happens. And it ended up being the best decision. I made the team. And my core memories in college are all dance team ones. I got to experience some pretty awesome things. Competitions, football games, traveling for bowl games, things like that, and made my best friends through the team. And so that's kind of what really inspired me to coach was my experience on Iowa State. Yeah. And then I graduated and there was an opening here, and I knew that the team was without coaches for a little bit when the season started up. So they started in the summer, and about the end of the summer, I actually reached out to Jim. I knew him since I went to Waukee, and also we happened to be neighbors when I was in kindergarten. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So small world there. But so I actually knew him and I reached out to him and I was like, hey, the girls need anybody to step in for some practices. I'm available, just because the season was amping up around August, with football games starting. It's kind of when they know their routines and they start prepping for competitions. And so I know that they might have needed somebody to step in and be there. And he said, we'll get back to you. And he got back to me and said, there's actually an opening if you want to come in and interview for it. So I did.
That was fast.
Yeah, it was very fast, and got the job, and I jumped right in at the end of August. I think my first week coaching, there was a home football game, and so I just kind of jumped right into it. And I was all by myself, too. I didn't have an assistant at that time either. And so since then, it's been like a whirlwind of growth and changes. But, yeah, that was kind of how I got started.
Yeah, so can we just talk about you just jumping right into it, I guess, and just going right into it? Like how, when you initially, I guess, in the email, obviously you're probably thinking you're just going to come in and volunteer probably for a little bit or something to that extent. But then you get thrown into a head role. What were you kind of thinking initially going to that first practice? I mean, I can't imagine you're fresh out of college or maybe a year or whatever, but you still have
Yeah, I had graduated in May and then started in August, and it was crazy. I almost feel bad for the girls. Those first few weeks I had no idea what I was doing, and I was learning. I had experienced teaching some classes or assisting with classes growing up at the studio that I grew up dancing at. And then my senior year at Iowa State, I was a captain on the team, and so I got to lead some of the practices when coaches weren't there, help make some decisions. And so I had a little bit of insight into what it would be like, but when you get thrown in and the season's already started, it's a lot going on. But it was looking back, it was really fun, and I wouldn't have changed anything that I did, but it was crazy. They had already known all their dances or learned them, but they hadn't been practicing them yet, really. Football season was starting. They do what we call sidelines, where the music plays and one of the girls picks which one they're going to do, and they all pick it up and do it. And so they had some of those, but not all of them, and they hadn't really been working on those either. And so coming into it, and I didn't have any really resources of knowing what to do, when to do it. we just started from square one and made a list of what needed to be done and asking the girls, what do you guys need done? What still needs to be done? And like registering for competitions and making sure that those are all aligned. Yep. Because there's tons of deadlines. And if you miss it, you don't really get to compete. And like big ones like state, obviously we want to be there for those. And so the girls were super great to work with, and those seniors that year was super helpful. They really led me in a good direction. And it's funny because going into it this year, I knew this year would be pretty special because of the seniors on the team this year were the first freshmen that I ever had and the first freshmen that the school ever had. And so they've kind of grown up alongside me, and they've mentioned that before too, that we kind of grew up with you as you grew up as a coach and figured out what you're doing. And so I'm sure it's been a big change for them, my first year coaching to now this year coaching. And I feel a lot more confident in what I'm doing. And I think the girls realize that as well.
Yeah. Like initially going out of college, like did you want to like coach and everything like that? I know a lot of people in dance studios sometimes will help with people, and you said that you did some of that, but like did you always like going out of college or like that's what I want to do, I want to coach? Inspired you to do that?
Yeah, so the coaches that first started with Northwest were actually the coaches at Waukee. So they both moved over here. And so there was an opening at Waukee. I actually interviewed for that, and I didn't get it. Which is kind of crazy, and one of those things where you're like, oh, everything happens for a reason, because if that happened, I wouldn't be here. And I love it here. I love Northwest, and I love the team and the girls that I'm with. And so everything kind of worked out the way that I think it was supposed to. But yeah, I always knew that somewhere along the lines that I wanted to. I thought I'd start out somewhere as like an assistant, working your way up, but starting off as the head coach for one of the top teams in the state and one of the top teams in the United States is pretty crazy. I feel really lucky.
Yeah. So, just like going into like some of the lessons I guess you learned, like what were some of the big takeaways from the beginning that like the very first lessons I guess you had to learn, and like the philosophy that you started to develop? Because like you didn't start under an assistant, like as an assistant, so under a coach with like learning the ropes and everything like that. So like what were kind of like the things that you discovered and had to learn when going through your very first year and everything like that?
A lot. Organization is huge. There's a lot going on at different times. I feel like I wear a lot of different hats beyond just what happens inside of practice, but making sure that everything's set up outside of practice as well, going into competition season and performances and everything that goes into those. Positivity goes a long way. I feel like something that kind of aligns, that has always aligned with myself and one of my philosophies as a coach, is, and this sounds counterintuitive as a coach, but it's just dance. So as important as it is to them and the girls on the team and to me as a coach, I mean, that's what brings us all together. At the end of the day, I feel like I've learned a lot about what it actually means to be a coach and to be a team, and the lessons that they're learning along the way and that I'm learning along the way. That really is what I take away from it all, and what I hope the girls take away from it all, that there are more things important than just the dancing.
Yeah. And then like over years, has there ever been, or like, I don't know, for other coaches, there's examples of like the pillars that they have, like when you start a new year or bring in freshmen who are like for the first time on the team, is there like certain pillars that you want to like base your team off of? As you said, like it's kind of just dance. And, like,
yeah.
I mean, you personally, it's organization, making sure everything's like organized, but is it, like the main like values that you want to instill into the team? Like if you left, these are the things that you would want to instill in a new team.
Right.
Want your dancers to walk away with.
Right. I feel like dance as a whole, I mean, most of these girls do it outside of the school and do it with a studio too. Have been doing it their whole life, and they do it almost every single day, and it's crazy, but it teaches like hard work and discipline, as I'm sure almost every sport does. Yeah. But beyond that, every year with the new team, I really like to sit them down and talk about what they would like the season to look like, and set goals as a team outside of the competition aspect of it all, not necessarily their goals for placements, but their goals for what they want the season to look like. And this year, I don't know if you've been in the multipurpose room, but we actually have a big poster hanging up, and we called them our team norms, and it was what the girls decided on. We have 10 things that are really important to the girls as a team. Some of them off the top of my head are having like respect for each other, creating a positive environment. Positivity spreads is, I think, what we put on there. Positivity spreads just as quickly as negativity does, and so we want to tend to stay on the positive side of things. being future focused, always representing our team, things like that. And year to year, they tend to stay around the same realm. But I think it's really important to have those girls sit down and have that conversation and have it come from them to see what's really important to them as a team.
Yeah. So when obviously you kind of got thrown into it your first year, but like your second year, when you actually had the time to like sit back and kind of have an off season, this happens all the time with a lot of coaches get thrown into roles where like, I feel like you don't see their full, like, not necessarily like value, but like potential as a coach. Like going to like your second year, obviously, just like kind of going from like the beginning where you have a full season, you have a full off season, you can like, I have an idea of like who everyone is, and you're not walking in, you don't know who any of the faces are, or skill level, or like what the kind of personalities are. So when you start like a new season, what is kind of the things that you personally do, whether that's just like look at the roster or like try to get the right mindset changes or anything like that? Like how do you prepare for a season?
Right. Yeah. My second year, I felt like I had a lot more control over decisions that were being made for the team. Like when it comes to like choreography, costuming, those are the small details. But then overall, just being able to like set a schedule, set a tone for what I want the season to look like and what I want practices to look like. I feel like girls then had an expectation going into that year of what it was going to look like, versus me jumping in and maybe things had changed from previous coaching that they weren't used to. And all of a sudden in the middle of the season, things are different for them. I feel like they had better expectations of what they could expect from me as a coach and then what I expect from them as dancers and as a team. So I feel like that was definitely different going into year two. And now each year as I go into it, honestly, before I get the team, there's not much. But once I do get the team and once we start practicing, right, working with them to see what they want their season to look like, setting up things like behind the scenes, like I mentioned, the choreography and placements and things like that, and registering for competitions. But really just figuring out what these girls' goals are for the season and what my goal is as a coach, both personally and competitively. And then making a plan to see how we can reach that, and making a plan for each practice and what that's going to look like throughout the year. And then going into competition season, what we need to do to get there to be ready.
Yeah. Like over your years, what has like changed in that like beginning half? Like is there certain things that you wish you did earlier or anything like that?
My confidence has changed a lot, honestly. That's been something that I've noticed is each year I feel like has been getting a little bit better and better. And then just going into each summers when we start our seasons, just more comfortable with what I'm doing. And I think the girls are too, just like I mentioned before, like the expectation is there now. And now we actually allow 8th graders on our JV team. And I think that really sets the girls up great for knowing what to expect going into, if potentially trying out to make varsity then along the lines. I think that's most of the girls' goals. And so I think being able to expand that has really helped.
So I want to kind of go into the season because the season is really weird.
It is.
On the document, I labeled it 2 championships because it's weird in a lot of senses because it's not similar to a lot of sports. But like looking at, because it's not categories, but also dance is also one thing that I have massive respect for after being in Joe Choir for a little bit, seeing the dance and then like seeing how they do it. It's ridiculous. But can you kind of, at least for the people who don't know, walk through kind of like the state versus the nationals?
Yeah.
And then also the 3 categories inside, because I know 2 of them stay the same, which was one of them, oh my gosh, what was it?
Our pom and our jazz will stay the same. Yep.
And there's like a game day.
Yep, that we add for nationals. So yeah, I'll kind of walk through a little bit of the season because I feel like it's a long one and it's very different from any other sport. You're right.
Almost like year round.
It is, yeah. So we have our tryouts in the spring, and then we start our season right when summer starts is when we'll start practicing. And then it ends in March for end of year show. So our prep time for competition season is right away when we start in May or June, all the way up until our first competition, which is usually in November. But then between that, we're also prepping and doing routines for camp in the summer, football games, basketball games, things like that. So balancing the time for practices between all of that. So then we have, we do a couple of regional competitions in November, and then our state is in December. So state and nationals are not affiliated at all. So nope. So they're just completely different entities. Our camp and our nationals are the same, and usually one of our competitions. So the company is called UDA. And then state is just ISDTA, Iowa State Dance Team Association. So they're completely different, but we do bring the same routines. We have the same competition routines year round. They don't have a game day category at state, which is why we don't compete it, but it's, I think, one of our girls' favorite. It's one of my favorite. It's actually the highest placement we've ever gotten at nationals was with our game day routine. And so that's why we continue to do it. It's really fun. And so we compete that at our regional and our national competition. And so state is very different because, I mean, it's local. It's really fun for the girls. Most of them dance at studios, and then they have friends that are at other schools that dance at their same studios. So they have a lot of friends out there that they like to see. Iowa has a very tight-knit dance community, so you know a lot of the teams and a lot of the girls and a lot of the coaches. And the association has stayed within the same family for a long time. So there's a lot of tradition behind it. Mm-hmm.
Like, is it like owned by?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. And so there's a lot of tradition behind it, and it's pretty close to the same as when I was in high school. Yeah. So, I mean, even like same judges and things like that. And so we know what to expect going into it. And I think from our perspective as a team that goes to nationals, because not every team does, is we use state as an opportunity to be almost like a stepping stone going into nationals. We value the feedback that we get from the judges. We enjoy competing against local teams that we don't compete against at nationals, and seeing a lot of familiar faces. And then just the opportunity to get our routines on the floor in front of people and in front of judges when the girls have like adrenaline going, is really valuable going into our nationals. Our nationals is kind of like our end all be all, what we're really like amping up for our entire year and looking forward to. And so nationals is insane. The environment is crazy. It is truly the best of the teams.
Yeah, and there's like a ton of them, right?
Right.
Like
Mm-hmm.
32 or something in a category. Is it more?
There's more than that. Yeah. I think last year there was almost 60 in one of our divisions. And so it's split up like A, B, C, and D. And then they advanced. Yep. Mm-hmm. So then they advance from A, B, C, and D to whoever advances from A and B will compete against each other in semis then. And C and D will compete against each other. And then whoever competes will then go to finals. So there's multiple rounds.
Yeah. And there's like 10 in each category.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. Around between 10 and 15. Yep. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. And it's honestly though, it's so fun. And I think the girls love it so much because it truly is all the best of the best teams there. Once you get to day 3 and it's finals, like there are sometimes I have no idea how the judges make their decisions or give their critiques because they're insanely talented teams that are going. And it's really fun. It's really fun for the girls to watch and be able to compete against them. It's inspiring for me to watch as a coach going in. It's kind of what gets me really excited for the next season. And yeah, the environment there, though, beyond the dancing is so amazing. The teams are all so positive and fun. Last year, the girls were lined up next to like a consistently first place team that wins a lot. They were lined up backstage next to them, and they were like, yeah, we made friends with them. They were talking to us, and it's so relaxed after the fact, after they're done dancing. It's so relaxed and positive, and the teams really get along, and it's a really fun environment for the girls to be in.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Over that course of that season, because you kind of went over a lot, how many routines, things do they have to learn?
So they learn all their like halftime routines that they do at football games at our camp. And so they'll learn 4 routines at camp.
How long are those on average? Aren't they like?
They're like a minute to a minute 30.
Yeah.
So they're shorter than our competitive routines. Our competitive routines are at 2 minutes.
That's still crazy.
It is, yeah. They learn them all in 2 days.
In 2 days.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then most of the time, we don't have the full team learning all the routines. We split them up, and then they teach each other once we get back from camp. And so they all know the routines then for halftime.
Is that specifically so? Like, first of all, are you choreographing all of this?
No.
I imagine you can't do
no.
that many routines.
So camp is owned. We also go. It's under UDA, which is our nationals that we go to. So they have camp instructors there, and then bunch of teams can go to camp together at the same time and then learn those routines. And then
so all those people have the same routines. And then
yep.
All of them compete to say like which one's the best in cleanness and stuff.
Kind of. Camp really isn't necessarily. I mean, there is a competitive aspect to it, but it's not necessarily against other teams.
Yeah.
So you go out and you learn your routines, and then on the last day of camp, the girls will go out, and it's a mix of a bunch of different schools learning their routines.
Yeah. Just like the game day ones.
Yeah. Right. And so what they do though is they get judged individually by the camp instructors, and they get ribbons, and based on the certain number of ribbons we get, because they're tiered, is when we get our bid to nationals. And so we have to go to camp to go to nationals. And so it is pretty important, but they're not necessarily competing against other people.
Yeah.
Whereas our competitive routines, I don't choreograph their pom or their jazz, but I do choreograph their game day. And this year I actually had help from the seniors. They helped with one portion of game day. So that was super fun to have leave their mark on it. And so, but yeah, so those routines, those are obviously then competed against other teams just all together as a whole.
How many of those would you say? Like, is there one for state and then one for nationals for like pom and jazz?
Yeah, so this year we did pom, jazz, and lyrical. And lyrical is along the lines of jazz, just slower and more like emotional is kind of how we put it. And that's what we competed at state and at one of our regional competitions.
Mm-hmm.
And then we took lyrical out for another one of our regional competitions and put in game day in its place. And then we'll do game day at nationals. We can only compete in 3 divisions at state. And so they don't have game day. So that's why we filled all 3 of those. Yeah. And then at nationals, you can only compete in 2 divisions plus a game day routine. Okay. And they don't separate it out at nationals. Like you could have a lyrical or a contemporary or a jazz. It's all just jazz. They don't split it out at nationals like they do at state. A little bit more competitive. Yeah.
Really
mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, like in total, I'm guessing you probably have like, do the things between pom and jazz switch at all between state and nationals? Like, is there a completely different show, or do you just make it 10 times tighter, 10 times cleaner?
Correct. Yeah. We go through and we change some things. Like we just met with our choreographer a couple times since coming back from winter break, and she's made a couple of changes, things like formations. If they aren't moving smoothly from one formation to another, she'll change those, adding in some parts, maybe changing some things. And then I go in throughout the year too and make some changes as well, depending on how it's looking and how it's coming along and how it looks on the floor when they're competing. So after each competition, we really take a step back and evaluate what it's looking like as we gear up for nationals, so we can bring our best product to the floor. So yeah, in total, between like the 4 camp routines and then the 4 competitive routines, they learn around 8. And then our spring show that we do, they do a couple fun ones, like they dance with their dads. They did a co-ed last year. So yeah, and then beyond that, they're all dancing at studios too and have like 10 plus routines there. So yeah, they learn a lot. Memory as you get older is not something that necessarily is a concern for the dancers, especially when we're drilling it over and over again. I know to like anybody outside of it, that seems like a lot, but for them, that's the norm.
Like how, I don't know like how to say that, because that's the one part of dance that a lot of people like, oh, it's just dancing or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But like, first of all, the attention to detail that the team's good enough to win state championships and make it to nationals and like compete and like get high placements, but then also at the same time like know all the different ones, and like I just don't feel like they get enough credit at all for how crazy it is.
Mm-hmm. It's challenging for them, not only physically building up the endurance and getting through the routines that are extremely hard and demanding. But like mentally, not only do they have to memorize the routines, but we go through and we clean. We go through step by step, position by position. And the goal is to have all 19 dancers in the same exact position at the same exact time, regardless of, there's height differences. They're standing in different spots on the floor. You still have to look the same as the person next to you. And that's the end goal. And so remembering everything that we clean and we go through and the changes that we make beyond that, when they put it on the floor, and then also have adrenaline running through them is it's a lot.
Yeah. And then from a little background of show choir, I know to some extent like the levels of dance, but also talking with Riley Cooper earlier, and like when she said one of the hardest things is like, for example, if like B8 you hit here or something like that, the difference is a lot of people getting to this point and
how they get there. Yep.
Which is, I can't imagine how difficult it is to do. Like all these people, all the dancers are very much high level, right? Like I can't even imagine like how their brains do it. But when it comes to cleaning, a lot of that kind of stuff, because on paper, I guess it's the same, but at the same time, it doesn't look probably the same. So like with a lot of those changes, are like that, are you calling like individuals out who like,
oh yeah,
it's like slightly off compared to everyone else? Like I can imagine it's
it takes
name calling and
yeah.
a lot of mental fortitude to take like,
right.
It's not me messing up. It's just like that could be doing it right, but at the same time, it's wrong, which is, it sounds counterintuitive, I guess.
Yeah.
But
no, I think that's a big reason why dance is such a mental challenge, because at the end of the day, it's you versus yourself and your personal growth. And then also being able to like you said, like I'm calling people out, and sometimes people get called out multiple times a practice, and it can get really frustrating because they know what to do and their mind's telling them what to do, but their body just doesn't do it. And it takes repetitiveness, it takes drilling it, and it takes practice, which is why we're there. But also being able to then withstand that and push forward and keep a positive attitude and moving forward is really tough for them. But yeah, like POM is super intricate. I mean, there's a lot of different motions going on at a fast pace. And if you're going to here, well, are you going there what we call shortest distance, which is just getting there as quickly as possible? Are you braking, or are you swinging and keeping your arm straight? And then that's every single position within the dance.
Timing in that
yep.
Too. Like, is it slower? Is it faster? It's like,
no, it's super intricate. And so there's a lot physically going on, but then mentally as well, remembering all of those and then applying it to yourself. And we talk about applying corrections quickly is also super important, because we don't want to waste time, and we don't want to spend time going over something over and over and over again when we should be moving on and doing something else and working on something else. And so there's a lot of different aspects that go into it that I don't think a lot of people realize.
Yeah. So there's not necessarily an answer to this question, but at least like I know a lot of cross country guys talk about it too. But what percentage of dance would you say is mental versus physical? Because
I'd say that depends on the
like
level.
Jazz or
right. It depends on the routine, but I think it also depends on like your level. Like I think there's a lot of dancers that it comes naturally to them, and there's a lot of dancers it doesn't come naturally to them, and they really have to work for things. But I'd say for our team specifically, and they might not agree with me on this because I'm not the one physically doing it, but I'd say 25% physical and like 75% mental. There is a lot that goes in through these girls' minds before they take the floor, especially at a competition. And at that point, we've done the work. I mean, maybe not at first, maybe not at first. It's not that. But once we get to nationals, we've had our season. We're 10 months into it. Like at that point, they know what they're doing. They're prepared. They're ready. They're physically ready. They've done everything in the routine, and they shouldn't necessarily have anything to worry about because I've seen them hit the routine. But then they get in their heads, and going out onto the floor in front of hundreds of people at ESPN in Orlando with how many judges sitting there in the back in a huge arena is taxing, and it's really hard for some of the girls to overcome their nerves. And I think that's, for me, interesting as a coach, because I was a dancer that didn't have those nerves. I got excited to compete, and I had friends on my team that we would sit there and we'd talk before going on, and I'd be eager to go out on the floor. And there are some girls that are like that, and that's awesome. But there are a lot of girls that aren't, and they close up and they get really in their heads, and that's when the mental aspect of being mentally tough and those pregame talks that we have right before going on the floor are super important to get the girls out of that headspace and to go out on the floor and be confident and know what they're doing and trust themselves and trust their teammates.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the hardest parts of just almost just being like a person in general.
Right.
Like being able to separate yourself from the moment. Because whether it's sports, whether it's a test or anything, it's so easy to get in your head. And I think that's, at least me personally too, how much I've personally grown in my sports. But also just with dancing, I feel like it's tenfold because as much as your body knows choreography, it's all about your headspace getting
right.
It's not like basketball where you're going against someone and it's almost problem solving where okay, he's here, I gotta do that. It's a lot of just your routine, your thing, and getting it done.
Yeah, so, I think that's a big takeaway from dance too. I mean, there's so many life lessons, but I think mental toughness and being able to take that into right. And being able to carry that throughout their lives is pretty cool and something that I think a lot of girls take away, whether they realize it or not. I mean, some of the freshmen when they come on the team to when they're seniors, the growth that they go through is amazing and crazy and awesome.
Yeah, especially that you've been a coach and not been a coach, but also dance besides your senior year and then also in college. How do you help them like mentally? Obviously, you said some of them were like you when you were in high school and college, where like get me on the field. Let's mm-hmm. Before, like I'm probably the same way now. Like, how do you help them before? Because obviously, you don't want to be helping them like right on stage like 5 minutes before. Mm-hmm. Like, how do you and like?
Well, we do that too, though.
Well, yeah, you have to, but like hopefully you're
right.
trying to make sure that they're at a point where it's not them completely freaking out and almost mm-hmm. losing it, and then like almost not to say it in like a bad way, but like throw it away
right
because like they freak out and then,
right.
One person's off, and it's like, oh, that person's off, and then
mm-hmm.
that's affected, whatever. But like, how do you help them build this framework of like mental toughness? Because mm-hmm. like, especially coming from someone who's walked the road before, is probably a lot easier knowing like you've done it before and you know what they're going through, and also like how hard it is. So how do you help them like just like think about themselves and think about themselves before performance or even mm-hmm. practice and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something that's in the back of my mind and the back of the girls' mind throughout the entire season. I think that's why we do so many performance opportunities, and like basketball games and football games are great for them. These basketball games around this time of year are great because we're doing our competitive routines, and so it's just another time to get them on the floor in front of people. Yeah. Right. Mm-hmm. And all these competitions leading up to nationals are great because not only do we get judges' feedback, but they also, again, get that chance to be in front of people. Yeah. And I always tell the girls, you should be running these dances when we do them full out. You need to practice how you want to perform because you can't necessarily mimic the adrenaline that you're going to be feeling when you're on the floor, but you can mimic the performance and how much effort you put out there. Because once that adrenaline kicks and you start also then putting in 10 times more effort than you do in practice, weird things are going to happen and you're not going to be happy with how it goes. So as much as we can replicate that feeling that when you're on the floor in that environment with each other, that can really help giving some perspective about like what the competitions are going to be like. We watch a lot of old videos and other teams or like college teams as well. And this is where I can really lean on like my upperclassmen or my seniors this year, especially, are such an amazing group of girls and they're really great leaders. And they're super helpful when it comes time to like, especially with some of the underclassmen, helping them prepare and get ready and mentally get ready and behind the scenes and backstage. Also just being really positive leaders and uplifting the girls and keeping the mood like uplifting and light is really helpful because once everybody starts to shut down, like, and it's quiet, then it's weird. And then, you know, you're going out on the floor with kind of a weird energy. And it's interesting because we talk about this in practice sometimes too, but you can feel the energy in the room when we're together. And if there's great energy, like it's going to be a great run. But if there's kind of a quiet or weird energy going on, then you know something's going to be off. But yeah, just trying to replicate that throughout the season, relying on the girls and preparing. I mean, we talk backstage a lot. Almost every single time we circle up before we do a routine, and I talk, and then we have captains for each routine. I let them talk, just last minute things. But most of the time, it's not even about the routine. It's about just like, let's go, let's do this, getting in the right headspace. And something that really comes to mind beyond that is this year we were going out for a competition, our first one in November. And I was like, you should go out there and have all the confidence in the world and show off. Like, you guys are amazing. You're super talented. This is the first time people are going to be seeing this routine. Show it off and be confident. And one of the girls was like, but don't be cocky. And I was like, no, when you're on the floor, you can be cocky. Like, you can show it off. Don't be, behind the scenes, walking around the competition. There's no need to be cocky. But like, when you're on the floor, that is the time to do it. And they went out and they had one of the best runs I've seen all season. And so I think also just like reminding them, like, it's okay to show off a little bit. I think they're a really sweet and humble group of girls that they don't want to come off as mean, walking around being cocky. I'm like, that's not what I meant. I meant when you're on the floor, show off, be a little cocky and see what happens and have that confidence in yourself and in your team. And so that really helps, I think, just those last minute talks before, and then relying on the seniors and the leaders on the team to be able to uplift the girls and keep the energy fun and light. When
it comes to like going into competitions, I'm guessing it's it's different than sports in the weirdest way, because like in some sense adrenaline's almost enemy, and then like maybe I'm preaching to the choir a little bit, but like from what I'm picking up is like, because the second you get into it, you're like, oh, you're into it, and you're like, oh, putting more effort, but yet again, more effort might mean you're getting behind, because like muscle memory is probably going to play a big role, but at the same time, like it's not where like basketball or something where, oh, you get adrenaline, now you're playing better, but like you could technically probably dance better, but at the same time you want to like dance consistently. You want to be in and out. Can you talk a little bit about how the fact like dance is technically a team, but at the same time it's just like you by yourself, making sure that you're as perfect as possibly can be, and making sure that you're on your time and you're everything that you need to be, because like you're not like playing off of someone else. Like it's not like in a basketball game where like, oh, you need someone to set your screen or something like that, or like you have to play off energy. It's just like you performing, you knowing yourself, and you knowing when the right beats are, when the moments are. Or maybe yes, there's probably moments of time where you're like, oh, this person did this, and then I need to do this next. And kind of talk about how just like the personal bubble, I guess. Or like the adrenaline too.
Yeah. So adrenaline is a great thing, and it also can be a bad thing when it comes to dance, like you said. We say this every time before we go out: don't let your adrenaline take over. Don't let it take control, because you can start to do some pretty crazy things or hit positions almost too hard, if that makes sense. So palm, you want to stick and you want to hold. You don't want to move, and you want to then get as quickly as you can to the next position, stick and hold it.
The palm's more choppy compared to like
right. But then sticking and holding is just for a count, and the music is going this quickly. And so it's still fast paced, but you still want to stick and hold. And so when the adrenaline comes in, that's when you see girls going past positions or taking longer to get there, or not fully hitting it because they're ready to go into the next one, and they're going really quick, and it takes over. And so we always want to say you need to use your adrenaline to your advantage. Like put it into your jumps, put it into your skills, jump a little bit higher, things like that. Your skills and your technical skills that can be elevated by adrenaline, but don't let it take you off course of what we've been practicing all year and how we've been perfecting it. Right. And so then with that, and the girls kind of, like you said, being in their own little bubble, it really is personally them against themselves, but as a team, them against themselves too. I mean, I know you're competing against other teams, but when you're done and you're off the floor, no matter what order you go in, your score is set and your place is set. Like there's nothing you can do no matter what team goes out. And most of the time, competitions have it set. So you're going every other dance with another category. So the judges kind of have a break. And I know there probably is some comparison, but really they're just judging what you put on the floor and then giving you a score based off of that. And you just have to hope that their opinion, because dance is so subjective, that score then is good enough and what you did to raise your score to be higher than other scores. So really it's the girls against themselves at the end of the day. And that's what I tell them too. I mean, you could have done the best you could possibly have done and not place where you wanted to place, because it's subjective and dance is based off of an opinion, which is crazy. And I think that's what also sets it apart from other sports, is that it's not so set in stone. Like you have a score, and like basketball, you score this amount of points, you have a winner, you have a loser, right?
And people are like, oh, there's a referee, but at the same time, like you can't discount whether or not the ball went in the basket or not.
Right.
Like with dance, that's like, oh, the arm,
And a score sheet, I mean, has tons of different things on it. They're scoring so many things at once, and we have like 3 judges for what we're actually doing. They have like 3 judges for just choreography, and then all of those scores go in, and then they right, exactly. You never know what they're going to see. So I have girls all the time that will come off and be upset with their performance because of one thing that they did that took up 1 count of the entire routine. A 2-minute dance, less than a second, and they'll be upset with the entire thing. And that's kind of also redirecting that mindset of like, you're going to let less than 1% of your routine that you did ruin the entire 99% of it. That doesn't make sense.
And also your headspace too. Like the second you mess that up, like, that's what the only thing you think about versus what's coming next. Like,
right. And we talk about that a lot too. Like you make a mistake, you don't let your face show it. And that's also a mental thing too. I mean, it's people's initial reaction is to want to react to making a mistake, but we practice don't do that. And then forget about it and move on and keep doing the rest of the dance like how you know you can do it, and don't let it affect you. But then, I have girls coming off that are upset about one little thing, and you're like, you don't even know if the judge saw it.
Exactly.
But then at the end of the day, the judge could have seen it, and that could be the difference between a placement. We've lost by 0.02 before. It's crazy.
How many points are there total? Probably like 100?
It depends on the competition.
Yeah.
Sometimes they take a total, sometimes they take an average. And yeah, usually out of 100 and things like that. But yeah, it's crazy. It comes down to 0.0 something at usually during finals at nationals.
Yeah.
And you never know what it's from. And sometimes it could just be their opinion. We've had judges before say they didn't like a certain section based on the choreography. And it's like, well, that's what we gave you.
Yeah.
But it could make a difference.
Yeah.
And it's just their opinion. And that's just what dance is. So all the time the girls are coming off and I'm like, are you happy with it? And that's the biggest goal. Mm-hmm. When they're happy and they come off the floor excited and happy, that is the best feeling.
Being content with
right. And then usually we wait hours for awards, so you don't know, and you don't know what other people have placed. You don't get your score right away. We don't see the scores until after awards are over, so we don't even know what we've scored when we're done dancing. No. Mm-hmm.
Why? I'm trying to diss the system too much, but like, why wouldn't they just send it off to you? I mean, I guess it'd be like, oh, you're talking scores.
Right. They probably don't want you to compare it. But yeah, we have no idea until awards are over what we've scored and what other teams have scored. We just learn the placement with everybody else at awards. But I mean, girls are coming off the floor and if they're happy and they're excited, I'm like, that's what matters the most, because at this point, it's in the judges' hands. We have no idea. And so if they're content and they're happy and they're excited when they come off, that's the biggest goal I think that I have as a coach, is when they're excited and they're happy with their performance, because like I said, they can make one tiny mistake and sometimes I don't even catch it. Yeah. And it ruins it for some of them. And I'm like, you can't let it. Yeah.
I feel like that happens a lot in sports,
right?
So like dance, it's magnified to a level that I don't think most people understand unless you're in dance. Because like to some extent it's like, oh yeah, you mess up your foot placement on one thing. Like a basketball, if you mess up, like it's so big of like, in a sense of like stats, maybe there's like 1,000 decisions made, but like in a dance there's probably like 100,000 decisions. Like it goes tenfold of mistakes you could have made. Like obviously maybe your footwork could have been bad in a basketball shot, but you still make it. Like the thing about dance is like, if it's not perfect, like that's points coming off the board. Right.
And it's so hard because most dancers that I know are perfectionists, right?
I feel like you'd have to.
Yeah.
To some extent, you can't be like, oh, it's okay.
Right.
You messed up.
Yeah. But I mean, perfection is really, really hard to meet. And so knowing there are going to be things that happen and it's not ever going to be 100% perfect. I mean, no, I don't know a team that's gotten a perfect score at nationals before, right?
I don't think there ever should be.
Right.
Like, there shouldn't be an expectation of like, that's perfect. Because there's always something you can improve on.
But the mindset then for the girls is, you're in this routine. We have 19 girls on the floor and their game day is 3 minutes long. And they're going through it. And I think something that people think about dancers too is like, oh, they just want to be good. They want to be the best. But then when you're in an environment like this, the baseline for us is trying to get everybody to be perfect and be together. We're not pointing out, oh, this person's better, this person's doing it stronger, because that's the level we want everyone to be at. Yeah. The thing that stands out then are when there are mistakes or when there are people not doing what's right. That's what the judges then see, because we're at such a high level of we're all doing the same thing. Yeah, what stands out in the judges' eyes is when one or two people do something that's off.
Yeah, it's like more the mentality of trying. You're not trying to win, you're trying not to lose.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, which is magnified beyond compare in dance. So, yeah, kind of talking a bit about that whole idea of like one person messing up. Like, obviously, okay, not to say I'm bad, like, let's say like one person, everyone else beside that person did it absolutely perfectly. Like, did not mess up once, but the other person had like 75% of the time messed it up. Like, how much of a difference in the scoring does one person messing up make compared to the whole thing? I don't know if it's like scoring wise is kind of funky in the sense of like they can only see so many things at certain times. Like, oh, that messed up, oh, that messed up, oh, that messed up, and then like go to at the end, like I see a ton of mess ups on this, so it's like a 10 out of 10 or like a 9 out of 10 because I saw them mess up twice here.
Right. Yeah, it really depends. It really depends, because we've had times before where we've had really high scores from 3 out of our 4 judges, and we have one judge that scored us way lower, and it brings our average down, so it brings our placement down. And sometimes it's valid and what they said was true, and then sometimes it's like, really,
Yeah.
Why is that score so much lower than the other ones?
Do you watch,
And
like,
the
film
consistency. Yeah, we do.
back? Yeah, I would assume so as well.
Right. Yeah. We watch the videos, we get judges' feedback. And so we do listen to the feedback or read the feedback that they give and really try to apply it. But that, at the end of the day, I mean, I tell the girls all the time, it's one person's opinion. It's one person's opinion that can make or break it. And so, again, that's, I feel like, why we go back then to the, did you feel happy when you came off the floor? Yes. Good. Because now it's in the judges' hands. There's nothing we can really do about it. Right. So the mistakes, it depends. I mean, we also all have our own opinions too. I mean, we compete against other teams and we see things happen and we see other teams make mistakes and you're like, right. And then they beat us. You never know. So you never know.
Yeah. So I find that it's the same thing with show choir in the sense of like, it's up to the judges. And a lot of the time, like, as we've been talking about, like, the only thing you can do is try to make sure you're in the best mental headspace. So, like, if you make a mistake, it's out the window, like whatever, like in Ted Lasso. I don't know if you
Right.
watch
Yep.
the show,
Like a goldfish.
Yeah, like a goldfish, right? So, or you gotta, like, even faster than 3 seconds. Good 3 seconds in a show is tons of points if you just get caught behind. But can you talk to a little bit about, like, either helping, like, you come to terms, like, making sure that the girls, like, understand. I mean, we've been talking about this a little bit, like the idea of judges and like how one person's opinion, like, just because one judge placed you bad and that's why instead of first you got third, like, how to still be content with what you did. Because at the same time, like, they're all perfectionists or as much as possible and possibly the most competitive people, like, because, like, you have 8 routines and you're trying to be as perfect as possible with all of them, and if one person messes up just a little bit, it could, like, make or break your score. So there's moments in time where obviously, like, I mean, I can't imagine how cutthroat it is. I mean, just hearing from other people where it's like, I'm so tired, but, like, I need to, like, get this right and get this done is, like, incredible. So you can talk about, I guess, in the sport as a whole, just having judges and how it's subjective and the subjectiveness of it.
I think, I mean, the girls know this, right? I mean, it's been that way since all of them started competing through their studios, right? Every dance competition is different but the same. I mean, it's all based on a score sheet based on the judge's opinion, and so they know what they're signing up for and they know what they're getting into. It's more of like, how do we keep going after we get beat down once type of mentality. And I think, I mean, with this group of girls, they're highly competitive, they're insanely talented, and they're super goal oriented. And so it's not hard for them to bounce back. I think, if anything, like, we did not place where we wanted to place at one of our regionals this year. And they didn't have their best runs, but I don't think they had bad runs at all. And if anything, instead of beating them down, because that was our most recent competition that we went to before winter break going into nationals, I feel like that almost, like, amped them up a little bit more and made them eager to get back to practices after winter break and keep working, because they've now felt what it feels like to not get the results what they want. And now going into nationals, they don't really want to feel that feeling again. And I feel like to replicate that feeling would be like not making it through one of the rounds. And for 2 of the routines, we go prelims, then semis, then finals. And then one of the routines, it doesn't have as many competitors, so it's just semis and then finals. And it's like, obviously our goal is to place. So before that, we even have to make finals, which is incredibly difficult depending on the teams that are in your division and how they stack them.
And, like, the luck of the draw. So
Exactly.
if you get teams if they're at a different point in the bracket advance, but they just happen to be in the
right,
same one,
right, exactly.
Because there's not seeding, right? There's not, like,
Nope.
number 1,
right,
number 62 or 148.
Right. So it is really like the luck of the draw and who we're up against. But it's like, to replicate that would be not to go through a round at nationals. And I know that none of the girls want to feel that. And I know that they're doing the work that it takes then to not feel that way again. I don't think they've come back to practice and been like, They've come back and they've been working really hard because they have these goals. And I think that's just the type of mentality that this team has. And when you have this level of talent as well, that the type of mentality that they have. And so that's been super helpful, just like that they're goal-oriented people. But also I think too, it's really important, like, sometimes they make mistakes that aren't their fault. Like, they could slip, they can fall, they can, right. Yeah, they can misstep. I don't know that the floor's ever been wet at a competition, but it could happen, you know. But, you know, they misstep or they fall on something and then they're beaten up by it. I'm like, the judges don't care if you fall if you get back up and you recover well and you get right back into it. I've seen teams win that have had girls fall front and center, but they got back up and they got right back into it and they didn't miss a beat. And that's, I think, from a judge's standpoint and from my standpoint as a coach, what I'd be more excited to see, because some things are just, they're going to happen and that's okay. But it's how you come out of it. I mean, both mentally off the floor, then moving forward in your competition season, but also physically when you're on the floor, it's how you come out of it. I think it goes hand in hand both ways.
Yeah. So when it comes to kind of some of these championships that we're always talking about, where there's the regional, there's state, and then nationals. So you don't necessarily have to answer this question, but you've won 3 state titles.
We've won 4.
4.
Mm-hmm.
2 this year, right?
Yep, 2 of them this year.
2 of them this year, and then 2 previous years.
Yep.
What were those 2 categories?
We won in contemporary and lyrical, which our contemporary is our jazz routine that we're taking to nationals. Yep. And we got 2nd in pom.
Yeah. And then, so you said that like nationals was kind of like the thing, like the trophy that you won.
Right.
Like, is there ever moments in time where like you would trade state for nationals? Like, is there a value of like how much, I guess, value would you place nationals over state? Like how many, like would you rather win like state 5 times or nationals once?
Oh man, if it comes down to winning nationals, I think I'd have to go with that, because that would be insane. There's not a team in Iowa that's ever won nationals before.
What's the closest?
We've gotten 2nd, and Linn-Mar has gotten 2nd, both in different divisions and different years. But yeah, I mean, I think winning a nationals title would be insane, especially at the nationals that we go to.
Did Waukee win it, like one of them a few years ago?
We've never won a nationals title.
Maybe that was cheer or something like that.
Maybe.
I remember seeing but
yeah, no team in the state of Iowa has ever won a nationals title, at least at like the major nationals that we go to. And so, yeah, there's a couple of them. There's UDA, there's NDA. But yeah, UDA is kind of like the big one that we go to. But yeah, no team at UDA has ever won from Iowa. So that would be crazy.
What would you say that would mean to like you and like the testament to yourself and your career if that would ever happen? Like, I mean, obviously, like you're always working to try to get
right.
And that's the thing you want.
Right. That would be crazy. I don't think I ever got into coaching, like even thinking that would be like a goal. But with the level of talent that we have here and like the girls that keep coming on the team year after year, like it definitely is attainable. There's a lot of different factors that go into that. Right. Exactly. I mean, the year that we got 2nd, I was hoping for top 10. Like we were sitting at our awards and there were 15 teams that were made it to finals. And me and my assistant coach that year were holding hands in front of the floor, hoping for top 10. And they listed 10th place. We're like, oh my gosh, we made our goal. And they kept going and they kept going. And they were top 5. We're like, oh my gosh, the best we've ever gotten is 5th. And then they kept going. And you medal when you're in the top 3. And they said 3rd place. It was us and another team. And that was the first year that as a coach, we've competed in that division before. And it was insane. Like that feeling could not be replicated. I mean, I guess unless we wanted to got 2nd again or won ever, but like it's just so crazy, especially at that level and at nationals too. Like you never know really, because all the teams are so amazing. So close. Right. Yeah. And so I mean, I feel like I've gotten a little taste of it when we got 2nd, like how amazing that was and how crazy it was and unexpected, but also so well deserved. Like that team was great and that dance was amazing and the girls did a really, really good job. But yeah, I think winning nationals would be amazing. And eventually maybe some year that could be attainable. I think it could be this year too. You never know, but right. It's fingers crossed. We've got a couple of weeks left until we're there. But yeah, I think that's definitely a goal. Then beyond that would be winning more than one.
Yes. Stacking on top
right.
Of all the
right. I mean, and there are teams where that's the case. There are teams that are nationals that they've won probably over 10, 15, some teams 20. I mean, they've been an established program for such a long time. We're year 4 of our program.
Crazy to think
right.
That we're that good.
Right.
I mean, even after like splitting a talent pool from like I always think back at like so many times of like just trying to think of what the roster would be on any sports team of like if Waukee stayed the same.
Huge.
Like dance, basketball, like football, like soccer, like any of the sports, like it would be ridiculous on how good the teams would be. I mean, it's kind of what Valley is to some extent.
Right.
At the same time, it's like wild. And I mean, the future program is only going to keep getting brighter too. More people get in. I mean, you guys have had 4 state championships,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it's the most out of any team. I mean, technically, you won 2 and 1.
Right.
So I don't know if you count that as, like,
3 years of it.
State championships, but I think that's possibly the most that any Northwest team at least.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, maybe tied, including the girls 3-peated, right,
Mm-hmm.
for track. But like, also the fact that a lot of people like don't necessarily know about that. They're like, oh, I only care about football and basketball.
Right.
Where it's like these athletes, like, in dance, it's wild. Like,
Mm-hmm.
obviously,
It takes a lot of hard work.
Yeah, like, a lot of hard work. And
for the girls.
Yeah,
They
I can't even imagine.
Mm-hmm. They work super hard.
Yeah. So, and then like I don't even know, but going into like the different. Actually, hold up. Is there like a time you have to be out of here?
No.
No. Okay. Because that was really awesome. Like that whole bit. Anyways,
Mm-hmm.
kind of getting into, I guess, advice you would give to a coach. Like, what? Obviously, to some extent, you were yourself, like a brand new coach starting, like 4 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So like, if you had all the knowledge that you had now, and could like for like an hour have a conversation like this to yourself, just starting. Obviously, maybe not the very first time where you walked in and they literally had a week before like the actual showing people what they can do.
Right.
But like, what would you say to them and to that young person, to that self?
I'd say I'm still learning a lot. But beyond that, I think, we have it written down in a poster, and we talk about it a lot. Positivity spreads, and it really does. Like, the girls create their own energy when they're dancing, but I also create energy as a coach right when I walk into the room and how I'm running practice, and I think that feeds into each of the girls and is super important. And that's something that's really important to me, is to maintain a level of positivity. So when the girls look back in 10 years and look at their high school career, they remember dance team in a good way. So that's super important for me, to make it a fun environment for them and a positive environment where they can really trust me as a coach, and then in theory then trust themselves as dancers and continue to reach their goals and move forward. Also to try to always assume positive intent. There's highs and there's lows, as I'm sure there is in any sport, and always assuming positive intent is super important for me. And then create a goal-oriented team. Each team is different every year. We could lose only a couple girls and also only gain a couple girls, and then 75% of the team is the same, but it's a completely different team. And so I really try to collaborate with the girls on the team, especially the seniors each year, to kind of have their help and see what is needed from me as a coach, and then let them know what I need from them this year going into it, so we can lead this specific team to the best possible outcome that's attainable. And so I feel like being collaborative with them and letting them have a voice is super important as well, because at the end of the day, they're the ones that are doing it. It's their team, right? Mm-hmm.
So kind of talking a little bit about like the whole, like, you as a coach. So obviously you're not a choreographer, which I always find something super fascinating, like especially with show choir too, where it's different in other sports, like for example soccer, like you're taking your tactics as a coach and your tactics and putting them on the team, versus like in dance, it's someone else is choreographing and then you're cleaning it. So how do you help balance that probably really delicate balance? Like, obviously you're a super high level dancer, so like you would know everything, like, I know, I'm guessing you're probably there when the choreography happens, and maybe you're learning it too with them or something. So like, how do you help balance that line and making sure that, like, maybe even there's sometimes where you don't necessarily know, but you're like, oh, I need to make this cleaner, like you need to learn something, like how do you balance the line?
Finding good choreographers. So we've had our POM choreographer now. This is our 4th year working with her. So like, she knows the girls on the team, and she does a really good job then getting to know the new girls on the team. And I work a lot with her before we even start choreography. Like, what skills are they doing? What level are the girls at? Who's this? She makes a group with the girls before she even comes and asks them to send videos of themselves, introducing themselves.
Okay.
She's very collaborative with us as a team. She checks in throughout the year. She'll be at nationals and then working with us there as well as amongst her however many other teams that she's doing at the same time.
How she do that.
Yeah, so finding great choreographers is a plus. And then our other choreographer that we use this year is actually a friend of mine. I went to college with her. She's a couple years younger than me, but she started choreographing while she was in college, actually, for Iowa State while we were there. And she's extremely talented. While she was on the team, yeah, her senior year.
The level you have to be
right.
That's crazy.
Yeah, but kind of she's extremely talented as well. And I trust her a ton. I mean, I know her personally. And then she also did a really good job checking in with us and wondering like what the level the girls are at. And actually, I had the girls taking a weekly technique class with our choreographers over the summer. And so they got to know them to a personal level, working with them every single week before they actually did it. And then also learning about their skill set and kind of getting ideas as that grows. And so I trust the people that we work with and the ones that create our routines, which is a big part of it. Right. And then also, like you said, I'm there, I'm learning the routines as they're learning them, kind of sitting there and gauging what I need to do. And it starts with one count at the beginning of the season and we work our way from there and get through the routines and we go through one round of cleaning. We adjust, we make changes along the way. We're still making changes. We're still going to make changes probably going into nationals in 2 weeks. We're going to make a change probably at their next practice.
Yeah. Riley, she was like, oh, yeah, we changed the entire back half. I was like, if that happened to me.
Right.
Like,
We've changed stuff before the night before nationals in a hotel conference room. We've made changes and they're just expected to go on the floor and do it. It is, but it usually plays out. And I mean, right, exactly. And like we get the feedback from the judges and sometimes it is opinion based on choreography and I see it and I'm like, oh yeah, that's a good point. I agree with that. And so we make a change and I do try to outweigh the benefits versus the risks when it comes to that. Right. Right. So there are things before where like there's a hard skill and it just wasn't working and it wasn't together. And I'm like, at this point, it's not worth it.
Yeah,
it's not worth it to lose points if they're not doing it together, to have it in the routine, than to just do something else that would look clean and would look together. Right.
No matter what we're losing points, we might as well like have a possibility of getting more versus less.
Right. So, and then it's like the trust. I always ask the girls their opinion too. Like, how does this feel? How does it feel going into this? Does this arm feel okay? How do we do this? And like, if we ever change anything, like there's a ton of different variations before we actually land on the final one because they do it and I make them do it so they can get comfortable with it. And also if it looks good or if they can do it, and seeing if it looks good all together as a team before we land on the final decision. And so it's a collaborative experience from the very beginning with our choreographers and then between me and then between the girls on the team.
Yeah. So as I stated to you before, like you make cue changes or even like reset like the night before nationals. How hard is it to like, as a dancer especially, I feel like it would be really easy once you get it in your body to have the muscle memory to like completely wreck like the entire back half of the show because you're changing it or completely throw out an entire point because like it's not like, oh, you can mess up a little bit when you're trying to make this transition, like especially when that example for like nationals, like it's got to be perfect essentially. And obviously a lot of them are going to push themselves to that standard, but like how do you help them in some sense like break down the muscle memory and
a lot of drilling?
Like, is it just
over and over again with me counting with the music? And I'm sure that they get annoyed because I'm constantly saying, okay, one more time. And then we'll do it at least 10 more times. But no, they know I have high expectations for them and they have higher expectations for themselves. So I don't usually worry about it. Plus they get to talk while they're dancing. I don't know if you've ever heard them, but they're constantly like shouting for each other. Yep. They're shouting out reminders. They're like shouting out names. Like, you got this, encouraging things. Sometimes I've had girls just like yell, like just like scream, because it's important for them to breathe, but also it helps and encourages the girls around them. They don't like to dance when it's silent, and most teams at nationals don't either.
They're just like saying random stuff.
Right. Yep.
Dance, like, is the idea that the judges would basically have like noise canceling headphones?
They don't care. No. It's actually pretty collaborative, and it's a good thing for them to be able to talk to each other. It's okay that the judges hear them. They usually don't at nationals because the way that it's seated is it's in a huge arena. Hundreds of people are in there, and then the judges are in the back of the arena up super high, so looking down onto the floor.
That was the stage, they'd be like way up here or something.
Yeah, but even like way further back then too. Yeah. And so like they don't usually hear them, but the girls can hear each other, and it's really encouraging for them to be able to hear each other. Plus, a lot of dancers hold their breath when they dance without even knowing it. And sometimes they're thinking so hard. Sometimes it's the skill they're doing, or they're going upside down, or they're turning and they hold their breath, and talking is a really good way for them to be able to get that breath in and out. And so like we encouraged it, and we're like, you should be talking the entire time. Like you should be shouting for each other the entire time. And so that's another thing. Like when we change things, almost half the team will shout change before, or they'll say what it is, and they're getting constant reminders. So beyond the muscle memory, it's in there mentally too. Like they know, and they know, they're so used to it too. We make changes all the time. There's a change, they know, like we need to apply it, we need to do it.
Would you ever say that like there's instances where like or you can tell like a change is hard because of like how just much of a change it is, I guess? Because like
I'd say so. I mean, we did pom at the basketball game Tuesday, 2 days ago, and we made changes right before we went out. We had a call with our choreographer because she had to add in a section, and so girls learned a couple of counts, and then we went out and we did it on the basketball floor. And there were some things that happened, like there were a couple mistakes made, or people went to the wrong spot, and that's okay. And then we did it for the boys game, and nobody made those same mistakes again. And I mean, I think that's why we do it, and we do things like this where getting them on the floor and in front of people.
Did you drill it all in between the two games? Like,
no, not in between. I mean, we practiced before, and then when the boys game starts, I make them come into the room, and then we'll re-warm up and stretch and play the music a couple times, and they'll go out and do it.
So the dancers learn the thing from the choreographer off the phone.
Yeah, we FaceTime her. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Like a giant screen or something.
Just my computer. Yep.
That's pretty awesome. And then a few people messed up, and the next time you did it, you didn't practice in between, and they just did the routine again.
Yeah, we played the music a couple times and walked through it. We reviewed some of those changes, but we never did it like a full thing again. But we reviewed those things again, and then they went out and did it. Like I said, though, I mean, they have those high expectations for themselves, and they know that's what expected of them. Like it's a given throughout any season that they're going to be changes.
Oh yeah, but like
so they know. I mean, it doesn't always happen, but
like it's just the unexpected nature. Like that's why I have these kind of talks. Is like if I didn't know this before, you'd always look at me like, oh, they're just dancing really fast and really good and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, especially if you knew like behind the scenes where you're like, hey, we just changed this. Like if you knew that before this actually happened, and then you could like look at it and be like, oh, whoa, like that was a change from last time, or this person like cleaned that up. And like, especially if someone ever like when someone listens to this and like takes a moment to like just watch and just like it's just the talent. Dancers. I mean, obviously you're starting at the age of like possibly 3 or 5.
Yep.
Even still, like
there's a lot of things that go into it.
Yeah, which I mean, just always crazy to me.
Yeah.
This question is kind of open ended, but you can kind of say something. And then, was there ever something at any point in your career that you wish you had learned sooner about dance, either being a coach or being a dancer yourself?
I think going along the lines of, the girls are perfectionists. I am a perfectionist too. I danced for 20 years. So like, it's okay that I'm going to make mistakes too, just as much as the girls are. And, to let things roll off my back, and not everybody's going to always like all the decisions that I make. I mean, my goal isn't to please all 19 girls all the time, but to do what I think is best for the team as a whole, and what's going to help all those girls reach their, shared goal as a team. And not everyone's going to always agree with me, and that's okay. And at first I used to take it so personally, and I'd go home and I'd be upset about it, and I'd be like, how do I make her happy? What did I do wrong? Is she upset with me? Like specific girls that I could just feel something was off or they were upset. And now, it's okay that not everybody's always happy all the time, because it's a process. It's a long season. There's things that are always going to change. And my goal at the end is to have everybody happy with their season as a whole, and help the girls reach their team goals. And hopefully that's the case.
And then kind of what are the team goals for this year that the team has outlined and wants to happen? Like, I'm guessing there probably is like, oh, we want to get first at nationals, but like sometimes we talk about a ton, which like it's subjective. Like,
right.
Is there ever numbers as in like first place, second place, or the champion? Because obviously it's different in sports where like to some extent you control it. Right.
I think they kind of shift and change throughout the year a little bit. Our goal is always, to make it to finals in all of our routines. That's our first and foremost goal there, which, it depends on, again, how your category is stacked. So you never know. So that's one of our major goals. Our pom dance, our pom routine, and our pom choreographer has a goal of medaling. That's always been our goal every year for pom, which would be top 3 at nationals. The closest we've come is 5th. We've gotten that twice. And then the girls, I think as a whole, their biggest goals are probably also medaling, placing top 5, placing top 10. All of those things are such huge accomplishments. And then, you know, we do talk about it a lot as a team. Like we want the whole team to come off the floor happy and excited. Because it does make such a difference to the whole competition. If you come off for one routine and, you know, if we have 3 rounds for 3 routines, they're on the floor and prepping 9 times. And so throughout 3 days, and coming off the floor one time and you still have 2 more routines that day, and coming off the floor one time and being upset can really, yeah, exactly. And then it's really hard to get back into it then for your next routine and put it behind you. And it's like coming off the floor and being excited with what you just put on, again, because we don't even know awards until after we're done with all the routines, is really like one of the biggest goals that I think I have for the team as a whole. And I think that the girls really strive for every time. I mean, they always say, no matter what happens, come off the floor with a smile on your face and be excited, because you could be personally upset about something you did and the person next to you could be super excited about the run that they just had. And if you're upset and they're excited, it's going to bring down the energy of a group. And so we want to cheer everybody on that's on the floor and be super excited when we come off.
Yeah. I'm guessing probably has been moments in time, but where you look or watch the national performance and like maybe you got 5th or the one time you got 2nd, where you looked at it and you said, if we'd have different judges, like maybe 2 out of 10 times we would have gotten 1st. Like has there ever been times like that? And we're like, as a coach and probably maybe just outside dance person, like a person looking on the outside looking into dance, being like, I'd be mad about that. But like, is there moments in time whenever that happens where you
have to wonder. I mean, I wonder every single time. You know, what would have the outcome have been if right, exactly. I mean, I think that's just a given. But being so used to it at this point, you're kind of just given the cards that you're dealt, and that's the case. And you have to impress those 3 people that are judging you, no matter who they are. And most of the time, even at nationals, you get different judges each round. So it's not the same ones, which is awesome and great. You have fresh eyes watching you, but they also could really dislike your routine compared to the first group that you had. Okay. Right, exactly. So, I mean, it's just, that's why I push the girls so hard to put the best version of you on that floor. It's you against yourself. You're competing against yourself. Because you just want to get 1% better every time that you're doing the routine, and hopefully get to the point where it's like, well, there's nothing for the judges to dispute no matter what they think. You know, you want to be as good as you possibly can be as a team. So there's not really points for them to take away. But I mean, we were so excited about that 2nd place though at nationals that you would think at first you'd be like, oh my gosh, we almost got 1st. But our first thought was like, oh my gosh, we got 2nd, because our goal was top 10. Yeah. And it was so exciting and fun. Yeah.
So kind of looking down the calendar, looking at the big red block of the calendar, right? Nationals. What can we kind of expect from the team? Like obviously, it's the first time that the freshmen have come all the way to their senior year, and you said that the seniors this year have a huge impact, and obviously they've been a huge part of the program, being there from literally the beginning of the very first time that you were a coach. Right. So what can we like? I mean, it's probably going to be this really like sad, but also like great moment.
I'm gonna be sad. Yeah. I'm gonna be really sad. I'm gonna miss this group of seniors a lot. They're a special group to me, and they're super hardworking. I love to work with them and collaborate with them because they have such great ideas, and they're super kind girls. And I think that they're all going to be successful no matter what they do. I think they're going to be sad. It's been a core group of them for now 4 years, and kind of growing with the school and with me as a coach. And I think that they're going to feel a little bit sad their last time on the floor too. But also I think this team this year is something really special, and that they've helped grow and achieve to have such a great environment and such a great team that gets along. And so no matter what happens placement-wise, I think that it's going to be great. It's actually very different this year, so I don't know what it's going to be. UD has kind of changed some things up.
Like some rules, or like
some of the divisions. So there used to be small, medium, and large, and that was based off of number of dancers on the floor. They got rid of medium. So now it's just small and large. And then beyond that...
How big was each? Like, was it like 100, 100, and so now it's like 150 each.
So beyond that too, they've also now added in D1 and D2, and we just make the cut for D1, and that's how many people are in your school.
Oh, right,
so
we don't have a freshman in our building.
Right. Yeah. So we just make the cut for D1. And so we're in the big schools, but then also in the large division. So we're in a completely new division than we've ever been before, competing against new teams that are, I mean, they're also in this division for the first time as well. So you never know what to expect going into a competition. And so
this can be wild.
It could be. Yeah, it could be. We have no idea. I mean, we have some idea of what to expect going into it. There are some of the teams that, are consistent every year that we compete against, and that we've competed against already so far this year. But otherwise, beyond that, you never quite know what you're going into again, because it's subjective and the judges could think whatever they want to think about any of the routines. So hopefully good things. Hopefully some great memories are going to be made. I mean, it's always such a fun trip being down in Orlando. We get a full Disney day after we're done competing, and I think that's a lot of the girls' highlights. But yeah, I think it'll be great no matter what happens, and that the girls will be awesome and successful and really work hard.
Are you a bit more, like you personally, a bit more like scared going into a competition like that, where you to some sense have no, I want to say no idea, because you have an idea of what's going on, but at the same time it's kind of to some extent also no idea,
right? I don't really necessarily get scared. I get excited for the girls. I didn't get nervous dancing. I get so nervous as a coach when they're on the floor. It is so much harder for me as a coach than I was as a dancer. And I feel like that comes from a place of, I just have to trust that they're going to go out and do it, versus when I was dancing, I had control over what I was doing. Right. So I get nervous while they're dancing, and that was never the case before. And then I hate awards. I think you just sit there and you wait for your name to get called, and you hope you don't hear your name called until the very end. But yeah, so I get nervous when we're actually there and we're actually on the floor dancing, because I just want them to feel good about it, and I want them to put everything they have out there on the floor and be happy with themselves afterwards. I don't necessarily think that I'm scared going into nationals, though, more than I am excited. And I think that's the case for most of the girls too. I think they're all really excited to go into it. It's going to be a little bit different this year. But I think all the things will be different in a good way. And I think too, the same way that I feel nerves when they're on the floor, that's when they feel the nerves too. I don't think that there's any nerves or being scared right now going into it, more so than there is excitement. Yeah.
And then kind of just coming to a close, I guess, is there anything else you'd like to add? Anything you want to talk about specifically about the team? Just think anyone or anything like that?
I don't think anything specifically besides, I mean, I've already mentioned this is such a great team. My assistant coach, we didn't really touch on her, but her name's Sophie. She's awesome too. She's one of my best friends, and she does a lot for the team, and the girls really look up to her as well. But yeah, like I said, the seniors are amazing, and I'm going to miss them so much. And they know that, and they know that they're special to me too. And this entire team as a whole is a really good one this year. And I think they're going to all be really successful girls no matter where they end up in life. And I hope that dance team plays a little bit of a role in that.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. And
just taking time out. Thanks for having me. It was fun.
Yeah, sweet.